As Rajan has already kindly announced me, I'm part of the ITIC team, the International Tourism Investment Corporation. And it's my pleasure to now move us through to the next session. And we have our investment ministerial panel. And we'll be looking at the responsibility of governments to develop a strategic plan for an investment-focused tourism agenda for the future. And to moderate this session, I'm delighted to introduce and invite Carmen Roberts to the stage. I think she's just being mic'd up at the moment, so she'll be with us in a mo. Carmen is a travel writer and television presenter with BBC, and has also been with us in Botswana last November at our investment conference there. And joining Carmen on stage, we are very delighted to welcome our panellists, the Honourable Edmund Bartlett, who's the Minister of Tourism for Jamaica. Welcome. I think we'll probably have to get you a microphone, Edmund, at some point, but somebody will bring it to you. We have Miss Mariana Oleskiv, Chairperson of the State Agency for Tourism Development, joining us online, if I remember correctly, for Ukraine. The Honourable Rebecca Miano, Cabinet Secretary for Tourism Kenya, together with the Honourable Vera Kamtukule, Minister of Tourism for Malawi. And finally, joining us will be Siby Diabira, Senior Manager, Western Europe for the International Finance Corporation, the IFC. So if you would all like to make your way to the stage. Welcome, come up, how do you do? And if you spot your photograph and sit in a chair near to that, that would be great. No? Okay. Carmen, you're coming up?
Yes, I'm
okay, I'll leave you to take over the stage.
Difficulties. What about Ukraine? Do we have them on the link?
My understanding is they're coming on the link, but you start off.
Okay.
And
we'll
make this available.
Thank you for bearing with us. We've had a few technical issues. We're getting all mic'd up now. Sit down. Is everyone else?
We go that way.
Have everybody with a mic.
Leave your card as well. My team, yes. Not me. Yeah, I have to fly 2 times.
Just so we don't have a gap on the stage, that would be lovely. Yes. Oh yes, or we can all move up one. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. Great that we're all here together now and we're all mic'd up. Wonderful. Well, I think from the previous conversation this morning, we've seen that tourism really is bouncing back, isn't it? The UNWTO says international tourism has bounced back to 96% of pre-pandemic levels, which is absolutely astonishing. And what we've heard about in recent years is the reset. We're resetting tourism. We're able to come from a better place, where we're able to have a second chance at getting tourism right in destinations. But what I want to say is what I've seen over the summer is the pendulum seems to have swung the other way in certain destinations in Europe and in some parts of Asia, like Bali, for instance, and in some parts of Japan. We've seen over-tourism. This is quite concerning in some destinations. So my first question to this esteemed panel is, what is your strategic plan? And and how we're going to get this right. So shall we start with you, Minister Bartlett? What is your strategic plan for investment in Jamaica?
Well, thank you very much, ITIC, for this, what is now becoming an annual investment conference in the margins of WTM.
Oh.
Yes, my microphone.
Are we on?
Well, let me use this.
Yes.
I hope you won't get a pushback. So I just wanted very quickly to say thanks to ITIC for this, what is now becoming an annual summit here in the margins of the WTM, and to indicate my own pleasure of seeing Dr. Taleb here with us today and listening to him. To the point of what are the strategic initiatives with regards to where tourism is going, I want to begin on the global scene, because I think that the recovery from COVID, which is what we're calling the PC era of recovery, has been quite disruptive. Indeed, it has been more disruptive than COVID itself, in terms of supply chain disruptions in particular. And much of the productive energy of the world is still to come back to the 96% level that tourism itself is at. So what is happening is that tourism is suffering itself in growing at the rate that it should. We have issues with capacity for airlines, for example. The production of Boeing and Airbus is at a level now where we can't get planes. So what the demand that is being driven by this entrepause, so to speak, from the entrepause which we had during COVID, is not being met by the supply capacities. Then we have human capital disruptions too, where some 15 to 20% of our tourism workers did not come back, and they still haven't come back. Have gone into other areas, and the challenge is for a new labor market arrangement around tourism that will be far more responsive to the needs of our workers and to be more respective of our workers, because the hard cold facts are that tourism has not been good to its workers over the period. So the future then has to look at how do we develop investment around these needs that tourism will have. And the projection is that, yes, 1.3 billion people traveled the world last year, 2023. We're expecting 1.5 billion this year. So we would have exceeded the 1.4 billion of 2019. But the bigger projection is that within the next 10 to 15 years, 1.5 billion more tourists will be traversing planet Earth, which will bring a total to close to 3 billion tourists. Now, that's the challenge. Where are they coming from and where they be going? Are they be going back to the same places? You made the point about over-tourism. Will they be going to the same cities? Will this additional 1.5 be going to the same cities that they had been to in the past? Or are they going to now new destinations that will emerge from with new demographics and, of course, new psychographic profiles? So investments will have to be in relation to that. People travel to fulfill their passions.
Yes.
What are these passions?
Yes.
You name it. So we have to build around these passion points, and investment have to be tapered in that area. Then we have to look at what type of policies and strategies destinations will now have to embrace in order to attract the investment. Earlier we started talking about ESG and so on, and of course, no doubt that discussion will continue. But we now have to look at how do we incentivize investment? How do we create the framework to facilitate investment? How do we make investment feel at home. In my university days, we used to say that investment goes where it's invited and stays where it is welcome. So we have to find the mechanism that will enable that invitation and for the investment to stay. And my take on the matter for the future is that our investment has to be in relation to the two key economic areas of tourism. One, the demand side. How do we build the facilities for tourism? The hotels, the airports, you know, the airplanes, the ships for cruise and so on. That's the demand side. How do we then build on the supply side? The consumption pattern of the visitor, and how do we satisfy that? And I have a strong drive, particularly because I'm from a small island state with enormous vulnerabilities, you know, but huge possibilities. And the potential for me to supply on the demand of tourism is equally very weak. So investment on my side for supplies is going to be what brings wealth, the real wealth, to my destination. And so we want to encourage agricultural development, investment in agriculture. 42% of the expenditure of a visitor is on food. So we must build out the gastronomy within the local destination. Secondly, we have to look at natural attractions, geophysical features, and creative output of the people from the areas. Build out those so that the destinations actually own the experiences that the visitor consumes. So in closing, our future for investment, certainly for Jamaica to begin with, and I want to suggest the world, is for us to look at how to create a set of incentives, a set of structures and system, legislative and regulatory arrangements that will be conducive to strong investment. And secondly, how do we channel investment into the supply side as well, so that the local destinations can be able to retain a larger portion of the tourism expenditure.
Thank you, Minister Bartlett. Some really, really valid points there that I'm sure our fellow panelists can expand on from their countries as well. But I'd just like to welcome Ms. Mariana Oleskiv, the Chairperson of the State Agency for Tourism Development of Ukraine, who has joined us by Zoom link. So let's give Ms. Oleskiv a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm keen to hear just initially about tourism in Ukraine. Obviously, it's domestic tourism at the moment. And what is your investment strategies going forward?
Good morning. Happy to be here again. Sadly online this time, but I'm sure next time we will try to make it live. It's a bit of complicated travel from and to Ukraine now, and yes, because of that, our tourism is mostly domestic. But I think that it shows the resilience of our industry, because sometimes you think the country is in war, there could be any tourism, but people do need to travel. People have a necessity to change their environment where they are, and they travel to the safer destinations. And of course, size of Ukraine is pretty big. We are the biggest country on the European continent, and the western part of Ukraine is considered to be safe in Ukraine, and we don't have flights, so people cannot travel to their summer destinations at the seaside. And again, with the global warming, more and more they choose Carpathian Mountains as a place to travel. And because of this, the demand for local investment is growing. And again, for local travel, and we have a huge growth to up to 100% to the pre-war levels of taxes from the industry in those regions. And at the same time, we have huge amount of investment. And Ukraine as a state has provided a state support for investment projects with significant investments. And tourism industry is one of the eligible ones. So it's around, investment should be more than 12 million euro, creating 10 plus new jobs, up to 5 years of project implementation. And it includes construction and modernization of facilities. And in the hospitality industry, we have already 2 projects that have been launched in this program during the war. And I will tell a little bit more later in another part of the panel about projects. But in general, we also have challenges. And I think it's a challenge, except for, of course, the ongoing war in the eastern and southern part of Ukraine. Which also we have missile strikes, unfortunately, all around the country. And of course, it makes it a bit difficult for investors to plan, but still people believe in a victory and in the end of this war and keep investing. But the challenge is also another one is sustainability. So because we have one part of Ukraine that haven't been as popular before as it became now, question of sustainability, of not ruining the normal environment, ecological and cultural of the people who live there, is a challenge we need to think about. And we are now launching and trying to launch a lot of new programs for green certification, etc. And really make sure that all these investment will not influence in a bad way on the community's lives.
Sustainability definitely is a key point that we will come back to, but I'm just going to go down the panel. So Rebecca Miano, can you tell me about the investments, the tourism investments that's happening in Kenya right now?
Thank you very much.
If we could just have a status update. Is that one? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here. I was glad when the Kenya Airways marketing manager confirmed that they're having good business. I was not able to fly out of Nairobi using Kenya Airways because all the flights were full. British Airways was full. KLM was full. And because I could not confirm my travel in good time, the only airline I could find then available was Lufthansa through Frankfurt, and therefore that is good business. So in Kenya, there is recovery to pre-COVID numbers in terms of tourism, and government has put in a strategic plan first to continue increasing the tourist numbers, because for a long time, despite all the products that we have recognized that probably Kenya has been punching below its weight, and it is about time that we then just promote tourism. It is one of our enablers in the economy, creating jobs, economic empowerment, and especially to the young people. 70% of all the employees in the tourism sector in Kenya are basically below the age of 30 years. And therefore, it is a sector that can change lives and enable our young people to have a livelihood. Therefore, the government's strategy first is to develop the existing products and have new products. For a long time, Kenya as a destination has been known for safaris and the beaches, but we have a lot more that we can offer. We have agri-tourism, the best tea, big tea plantations, and showcasing your tea from the farm to the cup and to the table. Obviously, we are known as the home of champions when it comes to athletics, and therefore sports tourism can be another niche market, a rich culture with a total of over 42 distinct tribes and communities, each with a rich culture and history. We can then come up with products. And it has been established that the oldest remains of human beings were found in a place in Kenya called Turkana. And we can now position Kenya as the home of humankind and invite researchers, scientists to just immerse themselves in that, because an old Turkana boy, 1.6 million years old, the remains were found, and therefore the archaeological facts and the scientific possibilities can be found around that. Another emerging area is wellness and fitness tourism. Nairobi as a city is the only city in this world that has a wild national park that is expansive, that is also a carbon basin for the city. You do not need air conditioning in your room. You do not need to worry too much about the pollution. And while at it, you can see the most rare animals, the big five, within 10 minutes of your hotel room, and many, many more attractions that we can have: adventure, mountain climbing, hiking, and the list is endless. Government has intentionally put in place policy frameworks, legislative frameworks, and incentives for investors in the tourism sector. There is land available in our beaches at the coast, the white beaches. We are coming up with tourism special economic zones where you can have tax holidays, you can have tax exemptions, and even just government support. But finally, just working with communities. As we all know, Kenya has one of the biggest number of national parks. And in addition to some of them being managed by government, we have conservancies that have been put up and managed by communities, over 200 conservancies, where they then take advantage of conservation, and they have put up a very high-end ecotourism facilities. And those are also available in terms of public-private partnerships, and investors can then come in and invest in the conservancies in addition to the government facilities. And therefore, we are at that stage or at that juncture where it is the right time to attract investments and to attract tourism. In terms of sustainability, Kenya's electricity is upwards of 93% renewable and green. And we are also promoting green tourism. And for travelers who are interested in sustainability, who believe in sustainability, that's an attraction in itself. So thank you.
Yeah, sustainability and definitely is a theme here. Thank you. Vera, Kamtukule, can you tell me what's the status in Malawi in terms of tourism investment? It might be a very different picture to what's happening in Kenya.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the invitation to come here. So in terms of investment in the tourism sector, I think for me, over and above everything that we're going to discuss here is the issue of political will for us to grow the tourism sector. And so I think as Africans, I've always argued, and I'm going to repeat it here, we are more similar than we want to admit. So the challenges that Kenya would be facing, the challenges that Zambia or Zimbabwe will be facing are the very same ones that Malawi would be facing. So we have narrow fiscal spaces, we are reeling in debt, and then we are not producing as much as we are importing and all of that. And that has been affecting our socioeconomic frameworks for a very long time. And so the government was looking at how do we get out of this mess that has been created by ourselves. And so they needed to look at sectors that would, push us to where we want to be. So as a country, we have a blueprint for development. It's called the Malawi 2063. So it's a 40-year development master plan. But under that, the government decided that we couldn't do everything. So we decided to isolate a few sectors that if we were to focus on those things, then we'll have enough money to build schools, to build hospitals, buy medication, train teachers, and do everything that we need to do. And agriculture, tourism, and mining was coming tops of that list. So we are following what the president calls the ATM strategy, agriculture, tourism, and mining, which makes tourism at the very, very center of Malawi's structural transformation. And that for me is a little bit exciting, but also puts us a little bit under pressure, as a sector. And so from the tourism perspective, we decided to say we cannot be developing our sector haphazardly. We just can't say, oh, okay, we want to grow the tourism, but we need to have a blueprint. So we developed a 20-year investment master plan. So we already have an investment master plan. It's 20 years, and it isolated over 103 projects across the country. But we isolated about 10 flagship projects that even if we were to implement 4 or 5 of them, we are going to change the landscape of the tourism sector in our country. And so we know that as a ministry, our responsibility is in twofold. Number one, to do destination marketing. Number two is product development. Now, I can do destination marketing even in my sleep. I can sell my country even in my sleep, even on my deathbed. But then after I've invited the entire world to come to my country, what are they going to see? And that's where the product development comes in, and that's where the investment issue now comes in, to say, how do you develop the product? Everything that my sister from Kenya was talking about, we do have that. The big 5, the beaches. As a matter of fact, Lake Malawi has over 1,000 species of fish, the largest number of species of fish in any other water body in the world. We have over 600 species of birds, and about 100 of them are endemic to Malawi. They are only found in Malawi, and I know that there are a lot of investors or tourists that would just want to come to Malawi just to watch our birds or to just learn about our fish and all of that. But we haven't developed those products, and so that creates an opportunity for people to come and invest therein. And so we have a specific, so I like what Jamaica was saying in terms of now building the skills, the local skills, because we know that we have these natural endowments, but how do we turn them from being a liability to an asset that now you can use that as a bedrock for your economic growth? I think that's what has been lacking in Malawi, but also I think in a lot of countries around the world. And so for that, what we have done is that we have put up a policy framework, procedures, and institutions that are supporting us in terms of now attracting tourism investments in the country. And we have an institution, it's called the Malawi Investment Trade Center. It's a one-stop trade center for anything. So if an investor comes, when you want to talk about issues of land and issues of taxes and all of that, and any initiatives that we have as a country, you go to one institution and you are going to be assisted within a period of 1 week. The other thing that we have done is that we already had about 40 or so countries that were coming into our country visa-free. And I want to declare here, I'm very excited about this. That makes my president a little bit progressive. He removed an additional 79 countries above the 40 ones that are coming into my country visa-free. Why did he do that? Because it is a little bit difficult for me. My sister, I was just thinking, and I'm like, I wish I had that. We don't have a lot of flights coming into our country. And I was also smiling when I learned that there are 5 flights from Dubai between Dubai and Zanzibar every single day. I don't have those direct flights. It's extremely difficult to get into my country. Beautiful as it is, it's difficult. We don't have a lot of direct flights. And that disenfranchises us from the entire market share as far as tourism is concerned. So the president said, we need to make it a little bit easier. For somebody, once they've made the decision to come to Malawi, let's make it a little bit easier. So 79 countries, off the charts, you're not paying visas when you come into our country. We want to make it a little bit easier. Now, once you come into the country, for whatever reason, that's when you're also going to see the investment opportunities, trade opportunities. And like she was saying, we have so much focused on maybe the lake or safaris for Africa. But now we are demystifying what tourism is all about. There's education tourism, there's agri-tourism. So we have one of our flagship game reserves, it's called Majete in the lower part of the country. It's very close to a massive, big agriculture project where we have built tunnels and we are using that for irrigation for cane, for rice and maize and all of that, and it's 1 kilometer apart. So when somebody goes to Moderator to see the big five, but they can also go and see those fields and then watch how those production is happening and everything. So we are merging and demystifying what tourism is all about and leveraging what we have to increase investments in the country. And then we have a number of policies that also we have created just so that we can encourage tourism. The other thing that we have done is the issue of land. Over and above issues of capital, labor, and all of that, then there's the issue of land. So what we have done as a government, or as a ministry specifically, we have already bought land so that on those flagship projects that I've talked about, when an investor comes, then the project is already ready. It's investor ready. And we have done feasibility studies for those projects. So when an investor comes, we are good to go in the next 3 weeks if they want. Why? It's because we know that it becomes a little bit difficult for a foreign person to come into the country to do investments on a piece of land when the land has not been acquired appropriately. So the government is taking up that hurdle from the investor to ensure that then they can have return on their investment, and also then there's ease of business. So the key issue there is how do we make sure as a country to make it a little bit easier for people to come and do business with Malawi, especially when it comes to investments in tourism.
That's great. Wonderful to hear that so many incentives are in place already in Malawi. So I want to bring in Siby Diabira from the IFC. Siby, can you tell me about the macro view? You know, there's lots of investment in developing countries. You know, what is the IFC's focus going forward? Is it Africa?
No, thanks. I'm very happy to be here first, and honored to hear what all is happening also in the different markets that are all key markets for the IFC. I think maybe just in terms of for the people who doesn't know, so IFC is the International Finance Corporation, so it's the private sector arm of the World Bank Group, and does invest into the private sector in all emerging countries and developing countries. So we have been investing in the tourism sector since 1967. That gave us quite a lot of track record and background in terms of where did we invest, what did we do, what did we good, what did we bad, and how we have to look into the whole tourism sector as a whole. And I think before talking about strategy, for us it was also very important to look at the key lesson learned. What did you learn from our different investments in the world, and especially when we talk about Africa, when we talk about Jamaica or Ukraine, those are also countries where we are highly invested in all different sectors, and obviously tourism is one of them. So we did have an approach of having also an holistic view, and I think that was mentioned earlier, of looking of what is the investment in tourism, into hotels. Mainly when IFC does invest on what we call tourism, we invest into hotels, into resorts, and both from local tourism, but also with international brand, because we strongly believe also that the international brand are bringing some also best practices that can help local investors. We saw also in the statistic that the investment that we do in the countries, 80% represent on SMEs, and 40% are also the job are also employ women. So we think that as a focus, as an internal finance institution, we looked quite a lot into the impact that the investments that we are doing. So in terms of, we were talking about strategy and looking about what we will continue to invest into tourism, we will continue to invest into hotels. Now we see also a trend of investment into platform hotels. We did one with Casada. So Casada did invest in Africa with Middle East investor, and they are also working with Accor as the group. And they invested into West Africa, South Africa, and the total projects was around 500 million. And as IFC, we did provide a long-term financing, because we believe that hotel investment or tourism investment need long-term and patient financing. So as the global, let's say, international finance institution, our key goal also is to attract other capital, is to attract private capital. So I like when you mention also from the Malawi that you are designing, let's say, a one-stop shop for investors, because it's very important for the investors such as IFC, but others investors that are coming along us, to make sure that we can invest into, let's say, with the
appropriate also all framework that is in place. And talking about also holistic view, and that was something that IFC did actually in Jamaica 2 years ago, was to invest or to also sign with the government of Jamaica on coastal road, because we need, as it was said, to bring people to those destinations and to make sure that this happen. Institutions like IFC are also making all the efforts to look into the infrastructure, the business infrastructure. So we think that you need to have that view in terms of strategy. Our strategy has always been, very strong in terms of investing in those markets, and it will continue to do so. We look project after project, and we are also having a huge angle, of course, in terms of sustainability. We have the capacity, and we did develop in-house the capacity to certify our project in terms of edge building. We have clients that we have been working with for 40 years that now have an approach of being also zero carbon, and we are able to help them into that strategy. So for us, it's a gender, job creation, sustainability are the strategy for IFC. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. So we've seen sustainability really is key in this. Minister Bartlett, how important is sustainability in going forward? And obviously resilience is your big passion project, isn't it?
Right. So the two critical pillars on which the future is predicated is resilience, of course, and sustainability. That to be sustainable, you first have to be resilient. And resilience is critical against the background of the numerous disruptions that continue to plague tourism as we move forward. As a matter of fact, tourism is the most vulnerable of all the economic activities on planet Earth. But our resilience, our capacity to bounce back quickly and to grow fast is phenomenal, and which is why tourism is now being preferred by so many countries as the driver of their economic recovery since COVID. So sustainability is understood in three key forms. One, environmental and sustainability, and that's about building what the product is, because the product for tourism is really the environment. And so to not build the environment is to not build the product, and therefore not to have tourism. So it's like a no-brainer. The second, of course, is economic sustainability. That's about the people. And the people are at the heart of tourism. There's no tourism without people. I borrow readily from Dr. Rifai, who says, and I quote, "I don't care a damn about tourism. I care about people." People is what makes tourism. And therefore, the development of the capacity of people to deliver more, to add value, to innovate, to be nimble, to be adaptive, to respond quickly and well in the face of disruptions in particular, it's vital to the future sustainability of not just the industry, but countries and the world. So the investment in human capital is at the heart of the sustainable development of our industry and economies. And thirdly, the question of how do we deal with governance? How do we make communities become alive and truly be responsive to the development activities that IFC and other wonderful finance institutions are providing? So the investment, therefore, for sustainability must be in one, climate management for the environment, to ensure, for example, that the issues of Valencia that we cried about this morning are minimized in the future, that the issues that I have in Jamaica, right now we're in a tropical storm watch, and we've probably had about 15 named hurricanes and systems since the start of this season. Then to look at issues of how to deal with seismic issues. They happen, earthquakes and tsunamis and so on. And island states, such as ours, are particularly vulnerable to this. And therefore, investment must be then in building capacity to, one, foretell these difficulties. Secondly, to mitigate against them. Thirdly, to manage them when they come. Fourthly, to recover quickly. And then fifthly, thrive. So we built institutional arrangements to enable this. And in Jamaica, we established the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center with the good help of Dr. Rifai. Himself and I co-chair that entity. And we have satellite centers now in 6 countries. We started in Kenya, in Nairobi, at the Kenyatta University. And for the good news is that the Kenyatta Resilience Center will be getting an award, I think tomorrow night, for being the #1 resilience institution in the world. And I'd love to commend them and congratulate them. And we have in Amman, in Jordan, the Taleb Rifai Resilience Center at the University of the Middle East. We have at Beaumont University where Professor Buharis is. We have in Bulgaria at the Sofia University. We have, of course, in Canada at the George Brown University. And we have also now in Brazil. So we are looking at building more. And we want to do more in Africa, and we want to do more where the vulnerabilities are highest in the Indian Ocean and the Philippines. In Philippines in particular, we're looking at that. So the whole idea, therefore, is for us to build the capacity of our people to be able to manage better the future challenges that we will have. And so the world will be a better place, tourism will grow, wealth and prosperity will be ours if our human capital is at the highest level of productivity because it is well-trained, highly professional, and properly managed.
I think that's a very valid point, to invest in the people and make sure they're educated. And this is why I think it's so exciting in Africa, because of this young population coming up through the tourism ranks. It's quite an exciting prospect. Can you explain a bit more about this in Kenya, for instance? How are you helping to empower these young people coming up through the tourism ranks?
So thank you very much. In Kenya, I think since 1975, there was established one of the best hospitality schools in Africa, Kenya Utalii College, that has been building capacity, training the young people, and ensuring that the region has the capacity that is required. And this is in partnership with some international schools based in Switzerland and other countries. But more interestingly is that now we are just about to commission a center of excellence, and that will specialize in bringing capacity for the cruise tourism. And just last week, I was in that school. It will be one of the best to serve not only Kenya, but the region. And therefore, if we are able to tap the young, innovative, and talented, energetic youth that we have in Africa, that will be a very big addition to the tourism sector. And the goodness with Africa, it's much easier to do the regional integration. We have the East Africa community, we have the COMESA, SADC, the communities in West Africa, and the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And if we put synergies together, And if we promote unity and cooperation, then what one country has can be used by the other countries for capacity building. And that is, we are really proud of the progress that we have made, not only as a country, but as a region in terms of capacity building.
I think that's right. There seems to be a lot more collaboration. Would you agree, Vera, in Malawi as well? Are you able to leverage off other African countries doing well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, as you're speaking, the issue of learning across and learning within Africa, that's what is important. Because like I said, we are more similar than we want to admit. So the skills that Kenya would require within the sector would be the same ones that I would require within Malawi. So for example, ourselves, we have the Malawi Institute of Tourism, we have a whole university that has a faculty of hospitality. At the moment, it's called Mzuzu University. And they're training people at master's or degree level, and for me, that's really critical. But for me, in terms of leveraging on that, we are facing a challenge in that there is need for us to review the whole political economy of tourism management in Africa. We need to raise the profile of tourism or the hospitality sector. At the moment, we still are grappling with the fact that if a young person is telling the parents to say, I want to go and study hospitality, the parents are going to say, what? You want to go and be a waiter, you know, something like that. So we have relegated the hospitality sector, but all of us have been served by somebody within the sector. And we complain. When we go into hotels and we have a very poor service, we are complaining. That is a lack of skills, and that's why I like my brother there when he's talking about the skills development. It's a huge component of tourism development, not only in Africa, but in the entire world. Because even when we come here, it doesn't mean that the skills development is only a problem in Africa. Even when we come here, we find poor service. You know, yesterday I was complaining at the reception. I said, excuse me, why wasn't my room fixed? And they told me, because you didn't say. I'm like, isn't that supposed to be automatic? You fix my room. You know, so we have a skill issue, because at the end of the day, we're not selling beds. We're not selling breakfast. We are selling a service. And to sell a service, you need specific skills to do that. We were in Zambia for the CAF meeting for the UNWTO 2 months ago. And we witnessed the launch of a center of excellence in Zambia, and the other one in Zimbabwe. We just crossed the Vic Falls. We went into Zimbabwe to do the same thing. And one of the things that came out very strongly was that even that mixologist is a skill. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we look down upon those people. And in my country, they even look down upon the girls that work within the sector. They feel like they are prostitutes. And that's why parents don't want to release their kids to go and work in the hospitality sector. And so what is happening now, it's affecting quality. It's affecting quality, it's affecting service, it's affecting the money that is coming into the sector. So we need to do something about it. But there's something that I wanted to add on regarding sustainability and the issue of community involvement. From our perspective, even when we look at conservation in our protected areas, the game parks and all of that, the first line of defense is the community. Mm. And so it is an anomaly that we must correct as African nations, that we have people that are living very close to our national parks or protected areas that would not benefit from that national park. What is it that they would be looking at to say, without this national park, without that elephant in that park, my child shouldn't have gone to school, my child shouldn't have found that medication in that hospital. So they are your first line of defense, which means, therefore, there is something that must go to them, because the people that are managing those parks, they are making money. And so we need to find an ecosystem that incorporates them, because they are the first line of defense. But we don't want to look at it from that perspective. So there's a lot of poverty around these parks, and then they go into the park to cut down trees, to kill the animals, because they're saying, you're making money and we are disenfranchised here. So we need to ensure that when you talking about resilience, sustainability, the communities are at the center of all of that. Last year's theme for UNWTO for World Tourism Day, I like it so much. It was people, planet, and prosperity. Mm-hmm. So you cannot talk about prosperity without talking about the people. You cannot talk about the people without talking about the planet. You harm one, you harm everything. So we need to ensure that whatever investments that are coming within Africa or around the world, as far as tourism is concerned, must take care of the planet and the people all the time. That's what I wanted to add on. Thank you very much.
Yes, very valid points. I just want to bring in Mariana Oleskiv from the Ukraine. How important at the moment, I know that there's a lot of disruption going on in your country, but how important are people and the planet in the Ukraine at the moment? Is this a priority, or is this taken a bit of a back seat?
Of course, it's a big priority, and first of all, because every day the huge destruction to all the nature is done in Ukraine. We have tons of national parks that are being destroyed by Russian missile strikes, and of course we understand that some of the areas will not be possible to have as tourism attractions because of mining and the huge problem of demining of big amounts of territories is a challenge we understand that we'll be facing as I think the whole world we are facing and we will be facing the next years. And of course, as I said at the beginning, at the same time we have a lot of tourism flows going to the region of Carpathian Mountains. We also understand that water supply, all facilities, green energy, these are not just words, but it's something that we need to provide for these areas. And again, as we have a lot of strikes on our electricity facility, generators are being used in many places to provide electricity in hotels, in hospitality industry. It also makes a big damage and pollution to the air. And sometimes, you know, it's very difficult. We have a lot of, unfortunately, wars going on in the world. And I think it's our industry is the industry of peace. And it's important to also bring this topic on every conference, because if we all will be able to assure peace in the world, that will make our talks much, much easier. And of course, we talk about the less pollutions, less CO, like carbon pollutions, but because of all these wars going on, and I think these pollutions are much worse. And this topic, and the wars influence, of course, tourism. All type of natural disasters, like we had COVID and other things, and our industry is the first to suffer. So I think that the topic of peace, and I'm really grateful to all the colleagues I know here being and organizers to bring this topic of peace and tourism in many, many events. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to bring in Siby Diabira in, because peace and sustainability, also investing in people, is this something the IFC is putting weight towards? You mentioned there's, of course, a lot of investment going into hotels, but what about the education as well? How important is that?
Yeah, of course, I mean, that's, and I fully acknowledge, I think, what the Minister was just saying in terms of peace. I think I'm just out from the annual meetings in Washington, and where there is also a gathering of all the different board members and states that are also around the world, and I think there was more than 100 different type of delegation, and we had more than 60 meetings around the week. And the first word that come out of this is that how do we support more our people in terms of both education, how do we create more jobs for all these youth coming, and as a whole, as a collective work, I think from the public and the private sector, how do we do that? I think from an IFC perspective, and this has always been the case in terms of we are still investing into vocational training, we invest into universities, but more than that, we need also to work and to discuss also at the from a World Bank Group level, I think, because we are part of the World Bank Group, and the World Bank Group is working very closely with the state to look into the education framework, to look into how the primary, the secondary sector is working, and how with a later stage the IFC can come in at the university level or maybe at the vocational training level, how do we can promote the different jobs that exist and the valuable jobs that exist into the tourism industry. And more than that, I think this will also create an environment of peace for everyone. So we do believe that our job will not be complete until everybody will be, and the youth especially, will be able to work properly and have a good job to sustain their family, to sustain, and being able to live in what we call a livable planet is also first to be able to have the access to the basic thing. I mean, the access to water, access to food, access to education. Those are the basic needs that everybody needs. So when we talked about green building, of course, this is part of what we have to do, but more than that, we have to look at the overall strategy and the world that we are living in. So that's what we do here.
Thank you. I think Minister Bartlett wanted to mention a little bit more about the education side of things.
Thank you. I think, firstly, to my sister's point from Malawi, the big issue of professionalizing the tourism industry is at the heart of the essence of human capital development. And we are seen as casual workers, by and large. And the economies that are seeking to drive value added look less on us because they say that we're low income drivers and therefore the possibilities for serious economic growth is not with tourism, which really is not true because they're defining us primarily in terms of the workers of the hotels in particular. And they're not seeing tourism in the broad sense that we are really a confluence of so many moving parts, all of which have strong economic outcomes at the end. And without them, the economies can't go. So they don't see that tourism is in fact an outcome of a whole myriad of economic activities. But back to the whole business of changing the labor market arrangements in tourism. The only way we could do that is by training, certifying the workers. Jamaica developed the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation, which is a pathway certification facility that actually goes into the hotels and the tourism space and find competent workers who are not certified and certify them. And we link with the American Hotel and Lodging Education Institute and the American Culinary Foundation and a number of others, and they get these designations. So what we have done is to create the possibility now, for one, certifying the workers, their competence. Secondly, to be able to classify the workers based on these skill sets and areas that they have. And thirdly, to be able to remunerate according to classification. And this enables mobility within the workspace. We then went into the high schools and we established an associate degree program for hospitality and customer service at the high school level. So we are graduating students from high schools for entry level in tourism with qualification. And so that will remove the element of casual workers' status and begin to put a level now of professionalization so that the workers within the industry can have mobility, but also portability. Because they can move from their space in Jamaica to anywhere else as professionals. Not as cooks now, but as sous chefs. Not as bartenders, but as certified hospitality service providers. And this is a whole way in which that respect that you spoke about for the tourism worker. Now the parents will begin to say, yes, you can become a tourism worker because you have the potential and possibility to be general managers and chief executive officers within that space. I wanted to say that because I think at the heart of the discussions that I started about human capital development is the business of professionalizing industry so that the workers can have a better place. In closing that loop for us in Jamaica, we deal also with the issue of housing for workers and also for health services for workers. And finally, we establish the first and perhaps only comprehensive workers' pension plan for every category of worker within the tourism industry. Not hotels alone, but if 30% of your income is derived from touristic activity, you qualify. The government of Jamaica put $1 billion Jamaica dollars to seed the fund. And by legislation, we established a fund that enables every single worker to be able to join. In 2 years, 10,000 workers are now members, and they have saved 3.5 billion Jamaican dollars. That's providing a social safety net for the workers. That, in my mind, closes the loop. You train them, you certify them, you remunerate according to classification, and then you provide social security at the end of their work.
That's a great model for a lot of these nations sitting here for us. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Minister Bartlett. Human capital is the real investment that we've got to start with. That's the main building blocks, is what I've taken away from today. I'm sorry we've run out of time for this panel, because we could be talking for another hour, I think. Such interesting topics and such amazing countries and where they're at different stages of their tourism journey.